Hey nerds, Farmer Jesse here. Welcome to Growers Daily, your daily dose of ecological farming insight. It is Friday, March 27th, 2026, and today we are talking about farmland, what's left of it at least, the Dogma-Free garden, and a little about AI because it's Friday and why not? So let's do it. All right, happy Friday, everyone. I hope you all are doing well and feeling well. Obviously, where I would typically do a Feedback Friday show, we are holding off until I fully get my voice back in all its weird glory. My hope, crossing my fingers, is that next week I can start back on full episodes, but I'm not going to, try and push that too hard. If it's too difficult on my voice, then I'll, just stop. This show is important to myself and the people it helps employ. So I think not ruining my voice should probably be a priority. So we will hybrid it up again today. And if I can pull it off, we will go to full episodes on Monday. Again, cross those fingers. Anyway, how is the week treating you all so far? I got my dryland rice seeds yesterday, so I'm excited to embark on that, little adventure. If for no other reason than just to have some experience with, dryland rice when people ask about it. I think I'll likely get those started today, although the temperatures are supposed to just keep dropping. It was like 80-something degrees yesterday, and we have a freeze warning for tonight, so that's fun. After this quite cold weekend, I'll get the sweet potatoes started in bins and get them slipping. Forgot to mention that in yesterday's April in the Market Garden episode, and probably a million other things. And don't forget to continue to send your 20-second farm video clips to farmermike@no-tillgrowers.com. Always love to see those. Just upload it to Google Drive or Dropbox and send that to Mike. You all rock. All right, so the tricky thing about farming is that you kind of need land to do it. For the last several decades, we have seen a massive consolidation in farmland from the hands of families and small businesses into large corporations. We have lost millions of acres of arable land to out of control development, and as a result, supply and demand, land prices have gone absolutely bananas. The current punctuation mark, more like an ellipsis, I guess, is the data center boom, which, itself is gobbling up farmland and power and water, but prices remain absolutely ludicrous. My own farm that we bought in 2020 has doubled in value, if not tripled with the infrastructure in 6 years. There is nothing sustainable about that if you want farms to exist in the future. And when you couple all of those costs with economic factors such as gas prices from thoughtless wars, then you get an utterly untenable situation. In effect, farms and farmers disappear. So let's put some numbers to this. A 2024 land value study from the USDA found that cropland prices have risen from $2,700 in 2010 to $5,570 per acre in 2024. In case you already haven't done that math, that's 106.29% increase, more than double. At that pace, can we expect another doubling in 14 years? More? Went up 4% from 23 to 24. So it looks probable that we will again see it double. But what does not look probable is that people interested in farming in the future will suddenly have double the money. I would guess it is more likely the opposite of the way that we are going. And there are people interested in farming. Those people exist. There are lots of them. But the barrier to entry is profound. Brooks Lamb of the American Farmland Trust wrote a good guest essay for the New York Times recently called "Why the Kids Won't Farm," in which he writes, quote, "The biggest barrier to entry for next generation farmers isn't knowledge or training or work ethic. It's the historically high price of farmland. Young people need an agricultural economy that makes it easier for them to farm. They need viable, consistent markets for high quality local products, and most important, they need affordable land." End quote. Indeed, it isn't that people have no desire to farm. It's that they increasingly just have no farmland on which to do it. They just can't. I don't study policy and I'm not in the habit of suggesting specific policies, but this needs some dang policies or there's no farmland in the future. Heck, there's barely farmland now. Vegetable farming is mildly achievable because it can be done on such small acreage. But if I was an aspiring, young nerd interested in starting a grain farming operation, and I'm not saying I'm not, I would need $1 million to get going, more to feed people with food that will never really be able to recoup that cost. I need to be wealthy. That makes sense. You can buy and flip a lot of things in this world for profit, but we need to dramatically reconsider how to regulate that with farmland. We desperately need to rethink urbanization and sprawl. Data centers, we definitely need to rethink those, which presumes we've thought about them once, I guess. When I was in Frankfurt, in our state capital this week, I made sure to emphasize that data centers are giant buildings that, beyond their energy consumption and water pollution, require hundreds and sometimes thousands of acres of farmland that will effectively be gone forever, non-recoverable, poof. At a time with minimal accessible farmland, we are converting it into something that can never be farmland again, so that we can get more detailed Google responses and generate pictures of random stuff. That Cool. Perfect. Farmers need financial incentives so as not to be tempted to sell off their farmland for retirement and put that land into land trusts. Aspiring farmers need more help accessing the land that already exists. There are people working on this, like, for instance, the American Farmland Trust, whom the author mentioned above works for, but they need more money. These ideas need more support. I know there are a million and one things drawing all of our attention right now, but I just can't help but feel like protecting farmland is one we can affect. And it's definitely one we will not regret protecting. It can actually be done. Like, truly, we could do it. Anyway, let me know what you all think. Fear, hope. I like hope. We should do a little hope sometimes. Otherwise, I'm feeling a lot more confident in my voice for next week. So in theory, we will be back to regularly scheduled programming on Monday. Until then, enjoy a couple more Farmer Jesse Friday rants from past shows for the next two segments. BRB.
Today's episode is brought to you by GrownBy. Grow smarter with GrownBy, the farmer-owned cooperative. GrownBy is the platform for online sales of everything. Custom and traditional CSAs, halves of beef, flower bouquets, wholesale to restaurants, and now GrownBy supports in-person sales too. With their new app, GrownBy Register, you can supercharge your market and farm stand, finally bringing together your online and offline sales and customer data. GrownBy is proud to make local food accessible by processing SNAP benefits online and in person right within the app. GrownBy helps you to put your best food forward. Schedule a demo today at coop.grownby.com/no-till. That's coop.grownby.com/no-till. All right, back to the show.
All right, so at the start of this week, I talked about the principles of soil health, keeping the soil covered as much as possible, planted as much as possible, and disturbing it as little as you possibly can in your context. There is, of course, a hidden principle within all of those three principles, which is to say, grow without dogma, represented with as possible. When we first started no-till growers, people would often say things like, if you are planting a crop in the ground, it's tillage, or if you're broad forking the soil, it's harming the some soil life, so that can't possibly be no-till. But one thing we have long maintained is no-tillage is not the starting point, or at least not always. No-till is the ultimate goal, right? No-till is a philosophy of doing less, of causing less harm, of actively improving the soil. And sometimes along the way, it's going to require some soil work, and it definitely requires putting plants in the ground. However, no two farms can and will go about this the exact same way. Farming and gardening is a relationship business. In the same way, one partner cannot just hoist upon another partner what they want without first asking what the other person wants from the relationship. The grower must listen to what their soil needs and not just bring their own unshakable idealisms to the soil. Moreover, what my soil needs here in Kentucky Zone 6B is going to be different from what a sandy soil needs, a tropical soil, a prairie soil, and so on. So too will my tool access be different, and the crops that I want to grow will be unique to my market. The materials I have that I can cover my soil with will not only be specific to my region by and large, but at a different cost, in different quantities with different levels of quality. All of that is simply to emphasize that we cover the soil, plant the soil, and we're gentle with our disturbance as much as possible, because success with growing food is not going to come from one's own view of what is a perfect farm, but rather one's ability to build a relationship with that farm. So do these things as much as possible as you can in your context, and don't compare what you are doing or how little or much you're doing to others, or think of any requisite disturbance as a failure if it's moving you closer to a healthier farm. It's not about being a tillage farm or a no-tillage farm. It's about being a steward. Being dogmatic about what a farm should be is not stewardship, it's performance. So indeed, don't bring your own strict ideas to the farm. Make it more collaborative. Let the farm create the ideas with you. And I think we will let you all say the rest in the comments.
Today's episode is brought to you by Good Agriculture. If you'd rather be on the farm than inside doing your taxes, you are not alone. Good Agriculture handles farm bookkeeping and tax filing, so there is no scrambling at tax time. They keep your books clean and up to date and show you where your farm's finances stand. If you're behind, they'll get you caught up. They also help farmers find funding and stay ahead of grant deadlines. You run the farm, they help the business. Learn more at goodagriculture.com/info. That's goodagriculture.com/info. All right, back to the show.
All right, our final Patreon question of the day comes to us from Miriam Cantaloupe, who writes, quote, Hey, Jesse, very much related to what you said about chefs using AI to create imaginary menus instead of asking young chefs to come up with innovative ideas based on a set of prompts. I'm a musician and educator who teaches children, but also young teachers. It blows my mind that edu influencers and edu companies peddling AI are pushing teachers to just use AI to create lesson plans, create slide decks, etc. A shortcut to filling students' heads with misinformation, and they say, parenthetically, IMO, in my opinion, and cutting out one of the most rewarding parts of being an educator, planning what you're going to do with students every day, not worth the environmental costs, end quote. All right, so I can't speak to the education sector of the world and their use of AI, and teachers have a really hard job, an increasingly hard job. But my concerns about AI and just the sheer lack of regulation and thought around it in terms of what people should and should not be using it for has been on my mind quite a bit lately. Environmentally, AI uses multiple times more electricity and water compared to a classic Google search, 10 to 30 times more, Google itself tells me. Quoting an MIT news article on the subject, quote, "The power needed to train and deploy a model like OpenAI's GPT-3 is difficult to ascertain." In a 2021 research paper, scientists from Google and the University of California at Berkeley estimated the training process alone consumed 1,287 megawatt hours of electricity, enough to power about 120 average U.S. homes for a year, generating about 552 tons of carbon dioxide. In terms of water is needed to both cool the servers which are used, they themselves generate a significant amount of heat, and also in many cases to cool nuclear plants or perhaps the evaporation from hydroelectric plants used to make the additional electricity the servers are using. So effectively, depending on the data centers, the conditions that day, and the searches and the power source, a handful of searches cost something like a bottle of water. And those bottles add up when you are talking hundreds of millions of users. Now, these data centers and AI models are likely to become more and more efficient, but I was introduced to an economic phenomenon recently, which makes me feel worse about that, not hopeful. It's called the Jevons paradox, where essentially more efficiency can lead to more use of a resource and not less of it. Now, it's not a bulletproof concept, but basically back in the later 1800s, William Stanley Jevons recognized that more efficient steam engines led to a higher coal consumption rather than less of it, i.e., rather than the conservation of coal, it meant we used more coal because we had more efficient engines. Basically, like it was with cars, as engines became more efficient, people didn't travel less, they traveled more and further. So gas and coal usage effectively increased, or at least returned to pre-efficiency levels. Or even when the cars are more efficient and the energy used in a lifetime is actually less, if the efficiency leads to lower costs or cost savings, the family may buy a second car and drive more, thus leading to greater usage of that resource, and so we return to the paradox. To be clear, there are improvements in efficiency that do lead to energy savings, but there are others, like perhaps with refrigeration, where people now buy more refrigerators and then more food, leading to more food waste. So it's not cut and dry, this paradox, but it is interesting. And in researching this segment, I found out that AI people really love the Jevons paradox because they seem to amusingly misunderstand it. Microsoft's CEO, for instance, wrote on social media, quote, "Jevons paradox strikes again. As AI gets more efficient and accessible, we will see its use skyrocket, turning it into a commodity we just can't get enough of." Well, yes, that will happen, but also the point of the paradox is that with the increased usage of the tool, in this case AI, will come with the increased usage of all the energy and water we don't have enough of. The paradox isn't about if efficiency will make the tool more accessible and easier to use. The paradox is about the fuel, in this case electricity and water, and the loss of carbon, used to run said tool. Gains in efficiency will lead to more use of the tool, thus the fuel. To me, frankly, AI needs some very swift and very profound regulation established, or we are careening towards environmental catastrophe, and not to mention social disaster as people, lose the ability to do basically anything for themselves, if I'm allowed my grumpy old man moment. I believe that large language models have a place in science, research, medicine, astronomy, those sorts of things, areas where crunching massive data sets can help lead to, for instance, earlier cancer detection or finding potentially dangerous asteroids or better security, whatever. It should not be used, to name a few, for art, music, writing papers, literature, Google searches, or basically anything for the average person. We do not need generative AI or large language models open to the public. We cannot use it responsibly. It's a massive copyright infringement, and it's going to gravely complicate the future for our children environmentally and just in their problem-solving skills. I was listening to a podcast the other day about how frustrated a climate scientist was because anytime they wanted to even test a slightly new idea or technology, it requires innumerable meetings meetings and ethics conversations and research into possible concerns about the test itself, and then AI/large language models and so on. That was all just a bunch of dudes in Silicon Valley releasing a massive environmental and social problem onto the planet with absolutely no real oversight. That is frustrating. We protect and encourage those who do the worst things for our health and the health of our planet, and we stifle basically anyone else who tries to help. This is going to be a hard thing to explain to our children. Now, do teachers deserve and probably need more assistance with their lesson plans and such? Almost certainly. But also, there are going to be tens of billions of people put out of work by various AI programs. So maybe some of the taxes we put on those companies who get rid of their workers for AI programs, also part of my regulatory suggestions, can go to paying teachers more and supplying them with more help for their lesson plans. Just an idea. Anyway, what was the question?
Step.
All right, I hope you all enjoyed that hybrid compilation episode. Really appreciate your patience on the voice as always. Don't forget, No Till Growers is a nonprofit 501c3, so donations are tax deductible and greatly appreciated. Please make sure to like and subscribe and to follow wherever you're getting this podcast. That is an easy way to help us out. Enormous thank you to all of our show sponsors. And if you'd ever like to sponsor the show, you can reach out to Farmer Michelle at notillgrowers.com. Huge shouts to Willie Breeding for the theme music, Mike Hilbert for the production help and editing, and my wife Hannah for absolutely everything in the world. Also, shouts to Epidemic Sound for the background music that you can hear. Pick up a hat or a copy of my book, The Living Soil Handbook, at notillgrowers.com to support our work. Big thank you to everyone over at patreon.com/notillgrowers, where at a certain level, or if you just bump up from one level to another, you sign up in the month of March, you get a shout out on the show. But we're going to hold off on shout outs one more time, and in the stories and all those things until I can do a full-blown episode. So stay tuned for that. And thank you all again for your patience. Much love. See you Monday. That'll be great. TGIM. Bye.
Just let it be.